Well, anyway, I had been a dancer, and I danced on Broadway, I danced in nightclubs, summer theater, and on the road. But I hurt my knee and I wasn't able to dance. So I had to look for a job, and I went to an employment agency, and they said, I saw posted, contact printer will train. But what interested me was the will train, because I hadn't the vaguest notion of what a contact printer was. Well, I became a contact printer, but I wanted to tell you something because it's obsolete now, what a contact printer was then. It was a big wooden box, and first you looked at the negative and you decided what it should be, like from 1 to 5, from soft to hard. And then you put it together with the paper and the negative together in there. But what was interesting about it was that you could dodge and burn in that way by using tissue paper. When you wanted to burn a piece, you tore a piece of tissue paper, made a hole, and more light went through. And if you wanted to make it lighter, you would put more tissue paper in. And I don't think that's done anymore, but I was thinking maybe Ansel Adams or one of the old that used the A10 negatives, because that's what we used did that sort of thing. But then I graduated to be a printer with an enlarger. And I know there's not much negatives anymore, but I did that for a while, but I started to look at what I was printing, and that interested me, and I thought, I'd like to try that. And somebody gave me a Graflex 3 1/4, 4 1/4 reflex camera, and I went out to the streets and I photographed. Then my knee got better, and I was offered a job to dance in a revival of Showboat on Broadway. And the show lasted a year, but during that time I continued photographing. And at the end of the year, I thought a lot about it, and I decided that I wanted to be a photographer. Well, instead of talking some more, I'd like to show you some of the photographs from a long time ago, from the 40s and 50s, which I have in my book, but also as I developed a little, and some of my assignments, and also some color, and as well as black and white. So, okay? I did a whole series on the Third Avenue L. The Third Avenue L it was built in 1878, and it ran the length of Manhattan and the Bronx. But by the end of World War II, it was the only elevated left standing in New York. The fare was 5 cents. And
I remember.
You're not as old as I am, no. And then in 1948, it became 10 cents, which lasted for quite a while after that. This particular station is an interesting station because it was unique in that it was built by a Swiss architect who tried to make it look like a Swiss chalet. Anyway, and it's on 14th Street. They had the potbelly stoves to keep you warm in the winter while you waited for the train. And several stations had them. The stained glass windows were colorful. They were red, blue, and orange. They were quite pretty. Riding the L, when you went up the stairs, you can look into the windows, and as you rode, you can look into people's windows. This is a dentist. And it was fun riding the L. But it was not so fascinating for the people who lived alongside of it. The apartments were dark and noisy, and the people above the second floor, if they didn't pull down their shades, you could see right into their apartment. The Third Avenue well there was mostly residential with small buildings, tenements, brownstones, and mostly walk-ups. People wore hats those days.
Did you shoot these with the glass?
No, I shot those with a contact. Yeah. Okay. My son says contact. Yeah, because then I had a Rolly cord after that, but this was shot with a contact, 35 millimeter. Okay, and these are people on the Third Avenue well riding it.
Were they done without a flash?
What?
Without
No,
flash?
no flash. Now, in 1955, they started tearing down the Third Avenue well. And it wasn't like it is today where they covered it up. You could go really close to it. People loved to go watch it. And they didn't wear helmets. And they were like actors on the thing. There's an Italian newspaper, and it's, you see it.
Vivian, what film were you shooting?
I always shot a Tri-X, probably. 400 always. Oh, I'm sorry, I want to go back.
Did you set it at 400 or did you?
No, that was 400 film.
Right, but did you pull it or push it?
What did you rate the film as?
The film was rated at 400. I didn't do
so
anything.
You rated it 400.
Huh?
Okay. You rated it at 400.
You didn't push it?
No, it was 400 film.
Okay.
That's what I bought. Which, when I had film up to about 2 years ago, I still use the same film.
Yeah.
This was a story I did about a little girl who was going to one of those free camps that they gave to poorer children. And I did a booklet on that for an ad agency, actually. It was called The 14 Days of Antoinette.
Were you printing your own pictures then?
I was, yeah. Yeah, I was a printer.
That's right, you were a contact printer, right?
No, I printed with an enlarger.
No, I know, but
And here she is going off to camp, saying goodbye to her mother. This is bocce ball. It's come back now, but these were mostly Italians. They brought it over from Italy, and this was taken on Houston Street, East Houston Street, and it's a very serious game. I tried to do bocce, to photograph bocce again, but now it's very controlled. They do it in the parks, and they wear uniforms. So
this looks like more fun.
yeah, this is a bocce watcher.
That's the cover.
That's the cover, yeah. Little argument. This is the Lower East Side. And that was a place, as probably everybody knows, where immigrants came. The Jewish immigrants came because of the pogroms. The Italians and the Irish came because of the famine.
So you got a little graffiti up there.
Yes. Yeah, even then.
Very mild.
It's now called the East Village, and which means I think that the rents have gone up there. These are all old-time Lower East Side. You see the prices? 5 juicy oranges for 25 cents. And these are women on the streets. Does everybody hear me? Yeah. Because I have a low voice only. Okay. I call this oy vey. Somebody asked me whether I had photographed the pickle place, and I did at the time. But I asked her, I emailed her back, and I asked her whether she thought this man was carrying pickles. And she said she didn't know. They have a little fire here burning to keep themselves warm. This lady,
Don't fool with her.
well, her grandson, I met her grandson, who came to one of my exhibits, and he said she was a very nice lady. Out of a package store.
Did he pose for you?
No, I don't know. He was just there, I think. But it's so long ago, I really don't remember.
I was just wondering if you ask people or you just shoot.
No, I just shoot. This is where they kept the horses in Manhattan. It's on the West 50s, and they still have it there. But it's very different now because these men were called farriers, or they still are, and they actually made the horseshoes there. Now they have ready-made horseshoes, which they tack on and they just fix it up. But I was there recently. I went down there, and they don't have a place for a farrier there anymore. Everything is different now. These are some of the men who worked there. And these are the carriages as they looked like then, which they take around Central Park. And in the background is the Empire State Building. If you go there now, there's a building in front of it. This is a fruit auction, and people came from all over, and they bid on the fruit. And the fruit was down in the basement, baskets of them, and they wrote down the numbers, and they came up and they did it like they do with paintings, I think. This was very competitive, and they took it very seriously. He didn't make it.
Did you ever meet
Time out.
resistance?
What?
Did you ever meet resistance in taking
Not there, no. Well, I have, actually, on the street, though.
Were these men middlemen that sold it to the?
No, these are the ones who was for the A&P and some of those places. Time out for a cup of coffee. Yeah. This was taken with my Graflex, actually. It's one of the first photographs that I had taken. And this was in Hell's Kitchen, which they don't call it that anymore. I think they call it Clinton. And this is a nice little Irish boy sitting there. And this is also in Hell's Kitchen, also taken with the Graflex. Now this is Dorothy Day, and I had a thing about it. She is now up for sainthood, and she was one of the founders of the Catholic Worker, and they had people come in. They had a soup line, and they fed the poor, and this was a block away from the Bowery. So these were Bowery people. And you notice that it's very different today. If you look at the faces, they're different than they are today.
Different haircut.
Yeah, different haircuts. This was inside the Catholic Worker. This is on the Hudson River, a seaman saying goodbye to his wife or girlfriend or whoever. And there, he has his duffel bag there. And the kids were just fishing for coins, I think, and it was something in the river. But these ships don't go off this pier anymore. Now, believe it or not, there were cows walking on the streets of New York, but poor things were going for their slaughter. And what? Well, anyway, now this area is very fancy. It's the meat market district. And no more cows there. This was taken in Washington Square Park. Now, there were not many airplanes in New York, and that's what they were looking at. This is in Harlem, and these kids were watching an airplane. These are all Harlem pictures. This case of Willie McGee this was in Mississippi, and he was accused of raping a white woman. Actually, it was a consensual affair, but also, if you remember Bella Abzug, she went down to Mississippi to be one of the lawyers in the Willie McGee case. They lost, and he was killed. They killed him. This was a story. I did a story on child playing with guns and violence. And this was a series. Look what they have as a gun. This little wooden thing. This was in East, they called it, this was Yorkville. I don't know, do they call it Yorkville anymore? Yeah, but that's with the swastika on it. This, believe it or not, was called, a game called lynching. And, but, you know, during that time in the 40s, lynching was prevalent, and there was even discrimination in New York and all over. But here are the kids in New York, and there was no lynching in New York, but here they are playing that game, and it didn't really matter whether they were black or white or whatever, but it was a game to them. This was a series I did on sibling rivalry. And this kid just got hit by his older brother. And that's what, you know, they had these kind of diapers then. Now I'm taking you to Georgia and West Virginia and New Mexico. And let's see. This was in Georgia. This also, he was I don't know, I think he was a sharecropper, but I'm not sure. I don't remember. I did a story on a doctor who treated the miners in West Virginia. This was Pineville, West Virginia. And I did that story for a magazine. And this is how the miners lived in these shacks. And here he was. He went into one of the miners' houses to treat this, or see this little girl. And these are 3 kids he brought into the world. This is in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and this is the Navajo area. And this is how their water, the Navajos travel around a lot, and this is how they got their water. And inside a Navajo house, which they called a hogan, and this is what it looked like inside. And it's just that one round thing. It was in the other picture, but you couldn't see it too well. This was the Pueblo Indian, and this was done for a medical publication, and so they were taking blood from this Pueblo Indian. And the clinic there. And they were.
Who said it doesn't hurt?
Now we come to New York in the 2000s. Oh, whoops, sorry. I had my hand on it. This was on Clinton Street in the Lower East Side, or the East Village. And
That bakery shop pumps you out.
let's see, did I go there? I'm sorry. Now this is taken all around. This was on 118th Street, actually the street that I was born on. I was born on East 118th Street. But it's different now. It was a Jewish neighborhood then. Now it's a Spanish area.
What camera are you using for the?
I used a Contax probably, or a Nikon. I don't remember which one.
Did you ever go digital?
I don't know why this jumps. What?
You ever go digital in 2000?
Where?
Did you ever go digital? You should go the digital camera.
Yes, I did.
Look at the smile.
Yes, I did. Yes. This I took on Delancey Street. Excuse me. He's actually drinking. Excuse me, he's drinking. It isn't liquor.
Vivian, this is shot with your Contax G2?
Probably, yeah.
Still film.
Still film. Oh, this one is digital. This one is digital. Yeah.
I think that was a Canon power shot.
Yes. Right. See, David knows.
What at B&H?
Yeah, I buy everything at B&H. I don't know what's wrong with me. It's jumping. This was also a digital one, and this was in the same area. This is on the west side.
So that's forward. Okay.
That was in Harlem. That's one of the fairs. I'll go back. Tell me if I'm too long or too short. That was also a digital. That was on Broadway. That's digital too. Yeah, now I'm digital. I never thought that would happen to me.
Me too.
That's on Broadway near Zabar's.
Yeah, 72nd Street.
That's in Harlem. That was taken with film. And she chased me. She didn't like it. But I already had taken it. But I ran when I was able to run. It's also in Harlem and with film. That I call her the church lady because she was just coming out of church on 12th Street and 2nd Avenue. This is around Macy's. This is a guy giving out free papers. I don't know, stinky streets, but. Oh, these people asked me to take their picture. I don't usually, I make believe though I'm taking it if they ask me, but this one I really wanted to. I don't know. It was at this was the Ninth Avenue a food fair, and there's a lot of music there. It's kind of fun. This, I was standing online at the tickets place down at the South Street Seaport, and I was on that line, and he was just standing there, and I had the camera, so I took it. This is near Chinatown, but it was a Chinese area. This is a park in the Bronx, and these were the kids playing it. Actually, I'd gone there to see the bocce players, but I didn't find them, so I found these kids instead.
Only kids are double jointed like that.
This is in the Bronx, and playing dominoes in the street. He's just sitting outside one of the developments. This is on Delancey Street, just sitting around. This is in front of 14th Street, Union Square, and he has this, but he's grooming himself in the meantime. I did a lot of the demonstrations, and this was one of them. This is a photograph of Daniel Berrigan, who is one of my idols. He's still alive, and I didn't know that. I
Is
just
he
heard
really?
that. Yes,
That's amazing.
yes. And as I said before, when I took this, it was in a dark church, and I came there especially to get his photograph. And I just held the camera and I prayed that it would come out, and it did. And these were some of the walking against the war in Iraq. This is from my window. And as soon as he saw me, he jumped down away. But I had the camera just before he came. He ran. Instead of running.
What developer did you use?
What?
What developer?
This is G11, Canon PowerShot G11.
No, this was with the Nikon.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's because I didn't have to carry. It was in the house. These are my color stuff. And I did this series on Amadou Diallo, who was shot. And they blamed Julia. They sort of, overlooked it. And Giuliani was mayor at the time. This is when they were doing the 42nd Street over. And this is what it looked like. I don't know. This is probably what everybody saw. And this is what it looked like before. But this was on 42nd Street before they did it over. Yeah, they still have these telephones, even though.
They don't work. And they don't work.
In front of a beauty parlor.
Some things you can't do.
This was it's Avenue C, I think, but they call it Lower East Side, which is the Lower East Side, but they actually named it Lower East Side. And these are just two kids in Central Park.
Kiss me, kiss me.
Now this is just riding on a bus. These are, and they're going to go by themselves. That's waiting for the bus. You can wait for the bus for a long time sometimes.
We should get together. I have a series inside the bus.
Well, these are all inside.
Oh, yeah, there we are.
Yeah, we went in. We're going inside the bus.
Yeah.
I actually wrote music for it, but then I used Taking the A Train, but I don't have it on this.
Are these digital?
No, these are regular camera. One, I'll tell you if, this one is digital. I think it's the only one.
Really?
Now all the rest I took with film. That's my friend here.
Do you use a zoom lens or fixed lens?
What?
A zoom lens or fixed lens?
No zoom. You see?
Did you develop your own film?
Did I used to?
Yes.
I used to.
What about?
Yeah, I used to have a role.
What about these?
No, these are film, but I don't do my own. No, thank you.